I'm ready to assemble the payload bay, and I'm giving myself the option of being able to interchange between just a standard coupler here with a bulkhead on it that we can put in here, and this would just give us a general purpose type of payload bay. Or I will be able to take a avionics bay like this one, slide it in there, and then use this for a dual deployment type of system. Now, by using these removable rivets, I'll be able to interchange between the two. So if I'm just flying normal single deployment and I don't want the extra weight here, I can just put in the normal coupler there, and that's going to save a lot of weight and also give me a fairly large volume there for whatever I might want to carry inside of it. Here I've made a mark in the center of the coupler, and so that'll just tell me how far up it needs to go. For marking the tube here, what I'm going to do is first of all use the avionics bay as kind of a guide. Alright, so I want this to go up about halfway up the bay there, so at about 3.5 centimeters. Okay, so I'm just going to use this as a guide here, and just every so often around the circumference here I'm just going to make a little pencil mark. Alright, and then I'm going to take a flexible tape here and just wrap this all around. Okay, and that's going to give me just a little bit over 18 centimeters there. Alright, and I'm going to use the payload tube as a template for both of the couplers there. So if I'm not exactly the same distance around here, it's okay. So I'm just going to make a little pencil mark here, a little T there at 18, and then I'm going to come around to 12. And then also at 6. Just like that. And so at that, every one of those little T's I've made is where I will drill. Now some of those, I think looks like my tape got a little bit off perfect there, so I'm going to move this around again. A little bit crooked, so I'm going to realign this to make sure I'm at all of my little depth marks there that I made originally. Actually, it's going to be easier not to do that, so we'll just take that aside here. Alright, and what I can do now is take my ruler again here. Alright, and I'm just going to extend these a little bit so that I'm right at 3.5. Alright, so I've got each one of these remarked, so the vertex of each of those is where I'm going to drill. Now I'm going to take this away to drill out the holes. These are 5 millimeters in diameter nominally, and so I'm going to start with a drill bit that's a little bit smaller than that, and then do a test fit and just work my way up a little bit bigger each time until we get a good fit with these. And then once that's done, I will slide in each of these in turn. So we'll put the coupler in there, and then at each one of those holes we'll re-drill it, And so they'll match this, and then we'll do the same thing here with the avionics bay with that in, and then we'll go ahead and do each of those in turn. Now we do have to be a little bit careful with the avionics bay because there is a sled in here nominally. We want to make sure we don't hit it. So we'll kind of make sure this is off center of any of those markings there. Alright, so I'm going to go down to the drill and drill these out, and I'll come back when I've got that done. I've drilled my holes in the payload bay itself, and then also matching holes in the two couplers here. Now if you look inside of these, you can see where there's a lot of paper material there that's been forced inward. Now that actually does give us something for the rivets to grab onto better, but I don't want to leave it just the way it is there. So instead I'm going to add some super glue, first just around the edges here, and that'll lock down those fibers and also help keep it from stretching with repeated insertion and removal of the rivets there. Now I'll do the same thing on the inside there, but first I'm going to take a little bit of sandpaper and just take off the majority of that material in there. And it doesn't take much. Just kind of rotate this around. Alright, now part of what's going to happen here is what it's doing here. It's kind of plugging up those holes again. That's okay. I'm going to go ahead and put the super glue down inside here as well. And just let that soak in. And then once this has dried, I can go back and re-drill it. But because it has the hardened super glue on there, it shouldn't just remake that plug. Okay, and after I drill it and maybe even sand it in there, that'll give us a hard but smooth finish that will help prolong the life of those holes. Okay, and I'll definitely come back and sand this as well so that the lips of the holes there are smooth. Now I don't have as much material in the inside of the holes here because I had the coupler inside this when I made the holes, so that there wasn't any room for the excess cardboard to move into there. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with my avionics bay coupler here, but it's going to take some disassembly, and I'll do that off camera. Here I have the rivets installed, and again, you don't need to do this. If you don't want to have this versatility of being able to change out the coupler, then all you need to do is use some wood glue or some epoxy and then just permanently glue the coupler into the payload bay. Alright, well, it's about time to put everything together. Alright, so the next thing we're going to need are the parachute protector here and the main shock cord. Now recall that we installed the Kevlar part of our shock cord early on, and so to install the main shock cord, let's go ahead and unravel this, get all the kinks and knots out of it. Alright, and so we've got a loop at one end and a loop at the other here. And so I'm going to take the Kevlar portion here and put that loop through one end of our main shock cord. Alright, and then I'm going to take the other end of the shock cord here. and pass that through the Kevlar loop. Alright, so when we pull that all taut, the loops are going to go over each other and form a knot like that, and that's all you need to do. And then take the parachute protector here and just put the free end of the shock cord through that and thread that down. Okay, now how far you go is kind of a matter of personal preference. Some people like to include the shock cord on the nose cone or payload bay side of this, while others prefer just to have the parachute and have the shock cord on the other side. That's up to your own personal preference, and there are pros and cons to each. Alright, next we're going to take the parachute here. Now for the parachute, I'm going to do something that requires a few items that are not included in the kit. Here I have an 1/8 inch locking quick link, and then a barrel swivel. Now these are kind of the heavy duty versions of the snap swivels that you'd find in fishing stores and such. And you can find these or something like them in fishing stores and such, where they're used for big game fish. So the first thing to do is to find all of the shroud lines here. Make sure they're untangled. And in fact, you may need to open up the parachute just to make sure you've got everything here. This is a fairly good size parachute for this rocket. Alright, so there should be adjacent loops here. Got one there, and one there, and one over here. So I'm going to take all those loops and stick them around one finger. And now this has a spill hole, so I can't hold it in the middle, but I'm going to find the middle here and grip around that. Okay, and then back in here, these should all be about the same length. Now one of them is a little bit longer. Alright, so you can adjust it back and forth here. But what should happen is that all of these points where the shroud lines are attached should line up. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and do that here so I can see how bad, if any, the shroud lines are unequal. Alright, so if I do that and come down here, alright, and actually all those loops are about the same length. That's what we want to see. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and put those back on my finger. Okay, and now I'm going to hold them here. Alright, so at this point on, I'm never letting go of these, even as I change hands, because we want to keep that relative distance there. Alright, and now I'm going to pass all of the loops of my parachute through one end of the barrel swivel. And it doesn't really matter which end you use. Some of these are pointy toward one end, and some are just cylinders. Alright, but the trick is to get all of them through there. Okay, and again, I'm gripping the lines back here. Alright, and I'm going to open this up. Okay, I'm going to pass the whole barrel swivel through those loops, pull the loops down like that, and now I'm just going to pull them tight. And that's going to form a little bit of a knot there. Now it's going to want to come undone, and we'll worry about that in just a minute. All right, now I'm going to take my parachute here, put some tension on it, make sure everything's still good. Okay, and now I like to use a little bit of electrical tape here. Now I've got some yellow electrical tape here. You can use any color. Alright, I'm just going to keep those lines taut again. And I'm going to install this right below the knot. wrap that as tight as you can. Like that. Now, depending on the size of your barrel swivel, the shrouds may try and creep up here. It's not going to hurt anything. Okay, now an alternative to this, if you're really careful, is before you put the barrel swivel on, you can slide a piece of heat shrink tubing over this, install the barrel swivel, move that tubing up, and carefully apply heat to it to shrink the tubing, but you don't want to melt the shroud lines there. Here I've added the quick link. Now I had to go off camera here and disassemble this and switch it around, because with this particular barrel swivel I can only get it on one end here. It doesn't quite fit the other. And so if your barrel swivel is doing that, you may have to try the other end, and if it still doesn't work, go with a bigger barrel swivel. Now this is going to attach to our payload bay and to our shock cord. As soon as I find the other end again. Here we go. There we are. And we can just close that up. Okay, now my personal preference is to have everything hooked into the quick link rather than having the parachute hook into this but the shock cord down here. The reason for that is that the quick link is going to be much stronger than that screw eye is. And so if you have a particularly hard ejection or fast deployed parachute, and it suddenly goes taut like that, if it's on the quick link, it's going to absorb that shock better. If it's on the screw eye, it could pull it open. Alright, so that's why I've done it this particular way. Alright, now all we need to do is fold things up and install it into the tube here. So I'm going to take my parachute, my shroud lines, tuck them into the parachute like so, hold that down again. Okay, and I'm going to put my shock cord on the parachute side of the chute protector here. Okay, so now I'm just going to put my chute in. Alright, followed by my shock cord. I'm just kind of stuffing everything down inside there. Okay, and we'll put the payload bay on like this. And then our nose cone. Now, I am not going to include the painting in this video, but some things to consider is, one, see how loose that is? We're going to want to apply some masking tape to that. So that should be loose enough that the ejection charge can pop it off, but not so loose that it's going to separate in flight. And sometimes after you apply the paint to everything, the cardboard may shrink a little bit and change this dynamic here. That can also change by the weather. So if as it gets hotter or colder, it shrinks or expands. Same thing with humidity. Here in Arkansas where I live, the humidity can swing around quite a bit, and as the paper absorbs water, it can swell and make this a little bit tighter. Alright, same thing with the nose cone. Now if you're doing dual deployment, you want this about the same looseness as you would down here, but if this is just a payload bay, you're going to want to use several layers of masking tape to make that really snug, or better yet, go ahead and add rivets to this as well. Alright, now if you're flying dual deployment, you don't want those rivets in there. Okay, so this is the finished rocket without paint. Right, and one other thing I haven't done here is I haven't put any rail buttons on this yet. And it's got the 1/4" launch lug there, and my intention is to add rail buttons as well, just to give me a more versatile rocket that can be launched on several different launch pads. But I won't do that until after I paint it. Okay, but generally one of those rail buttons will go down here at the aft end, and the other one generally up in here somewhere around the center of gravity. Okay, now also, as I've mentioned before, this kit does not come with a motor retainer. You can just leave it like this is and use masking tape around it to secure your motor. Or if you want to get a motor retainer like this one, again, I won't put this on until after I paint it, but go ahead and mask this off, and then after painting, you can take the rocket end of this and screw that there. Okay, roughen up the inside, roughen up the outside of the motor mount tube, and then this just epoxies on like that. Okay, and then you can add this to it. Now, I'm probably going to end up going with a different motor retainer simply because these polycarbonate ones do extend a little bit over the body tube. And so I may have to go with an aluminum one on this, or just fly it without one. Okay, with that, I hope you have a great flight and a safe recovery, and please stay tuned for more of my videos.